All right, let's look. We've talked about the Quran, this revelation of Allah through Muhammad, but we haven't really talked about what's in it yet. So let's talk about the Holy Quran. The Quran is the literal, eternal, and uncreated Word of God sent down to the Prophet as a guide for humans. By the way, let me back up. So, the Bible is divinely inspired. So is the New Testament. So is the Hebrew Bible. The Quran is literally the Word of God. That's important. God reveals His Word to prophets, and Muslims certainly see Judaism and Christianity as having true prophets. The Quran confirms the Torah and the Gospels as revelations that came from God. But those revelations became corrupted over time by doctrinal interpretations and arguments. For example, the divinity of Jesus. Early Christians did argue over the divinity of Jesus, and the Quran says Jesus is a wonderful prophet, divine. No, that's crazy talk. The Quran was sent as a correction, not a rejection. Therefore, Muslims see Islam as the oldest Abrahamic faith, going back to Abraham, God and Abraham, much like Protestants see themselves as going back to the original intention of Judaism, of Christianity rather. The Quran, Sunnah, and Hadith are what Muslims use as a guide for daily life. So the Quran is the revelation, and the Sunnah and the Hadith tell us how to interpret that revelation. The Quran was revealed to Muhammad in stages over a 22-year period, divided kind of into two parts. The Meccan revelations from 610 to 622, and the Medinan from 622 to 632. The Quran was preserved in both oral and written form during the lifetime of the Prophet. It was collected and compiled in its current form during the reign of the third Caliph, Uthman. So Uthman was the person who was a contemporary of Muhammad. And there is now a Quran at the University of Birmingham, England, that it was recently carbon dated to within the life of the Prophet. So it's written down quickly. The longer chapters, the Medinan, come first. The shortest, the Meccan, last. So there is a short surah, opening surah, and then the second surah is the longest one. They get shorter and shorter and shorter to the end. So it's based on length, not chronology, although the chronology sort of fits. This is some written Arabic, which is very beautiful. Arabic is the exclusive liturgical language of Islam. The Quran is considered a miraculous text whose language cannot be duplicated. Translation was forbidden until recently, and is usually accompanied by Arabic. When I say recently, I mean about 100 years ago. So there are stories of people converting to Islam simply from hearing the Quran recited in Arabic. It's so beautiful. And it's played a major role in the development of the Arabic language and literature. It's really beautiful classical Arabic. And that's true of, say, the King James Bible, one of the greatest, it's helped define modern English, one of the greatest pieces of literature in English. But the connection between the Quran and Arabic is even stronger than that. Reciters and chanters of the Quran are held in great esteem throughout the Islamic world. They can fill stadiums. Here's a little video clip of a documentary we're going to watch next semester.
مسألة التميز بالسن في هذه المرحلة تميزكم بالحفظ والأكثر إتقانا. She has to be educated, but she will be a housewife. على بركة الله نعلن النتيجة لتصبح كالتالي.
Okay, so what sort of cosmological universe does the Quran describe? Allah and the creation are at the center. God is transcendent and unknowable, but His nature is revealed in His creation, the earth, in His revelation, the Quran, and in historical acts. Thus, the Quran does not reveal God per se, but rather His will, His law for all creation. Islam is absolutely monotheistic. No God but God. No Trinity, no associational idolatry. He is indivisible. God judges, but he is forgiving and sustaining. His mercy and compassion are made clear in the opening words of the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which means in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. You hear this phrase all over the Muslim world. I don't imagine you would start a Muslim Rotary Club meeting without saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. God's mercy exists in tension with his role as a judge. On Judgment Day, all humans will be judged and rewarded or punished based on their obedience or disobedience. The Quranic universe has three realms: heaven, earth, and hell. There are two types of beings, humans and spirits. There are three types of spiritual beings. There are angels who are made of light and cannot but do good. There are devils made of fire who are inherently evil. And there are also jinns. Jinns are made of smokeless fire and can be good or bad. What am I talking about, jinn? Well, it's a genie. This is shaitan, which equals evil, equals disobedience to God. His fall was caused by his refusal to prostrate himself to Adam at God's command. Look at this wonderful new thing I've created. Please bow before it. This fall led to the struggle of humans torn between the forces of good and evil. Humans enjoy a special status because God breathes his spirit into Adam. They were created to be God's representatives on earth, which is given to them as a trust. There is no inherent sin. God's punishment to Adam and Eve were for their own actions. Sin is disobedience rather than an eternal state of being. The Ummah has a mandate to create a moral social order. This requirement is reflected in a number of Quranic themes. Theme 1, social justice. One of the initially most striking features of the Quran was the social justice that it institutionalized, like the zakat alms tax we'll talk about later that Muslims pay to build schools and hospitals and orphanages, requirements about inheritance for women and children, which did not exist in pre-Islamic Arabia, usury, the lending of money for interest, which made the Quraysh very rich. That's forbidden. The Ummah must struggle, jihad is the Arabic word for struggle, to promote justice. This includes the right to armed defense to protect the downtrodden and victims of oppression. Quranic theme number 2, gender equality. Now, there's this perception that Islam is very patriarchal. Well, Homo sapiens are very patriarchal, but the Quran significantly elevated the status of women from pre-Islamic Arabia. It banned female infanticide. Pre-Islamic Arabia, you had a girl, you'd frequently take her out in the desert and just leave her. It ended women's status as property. They were literally enslaved before the Quran. It allowed women to retain control of their property. It gave women financial maintenance in the event of divorce. Men and women are both required to create a just society. Women are co-equal with men in the responsibility to create a just society. This is the last revelation to address relations between men and women. Quranic theme number 3, love and justice in families. The Hadith underscores this. The Prophet said, the Hadith tells us the Prophet said, the best among you is the one who is best to his wife. Quranic theme number 4, religious tolerance. One verse makes clear there is to be no compulsion in religion. That's what it actually says. There is to be no compulsion in religion. Many passages underscore the diversity of humankind, and the Ummah is to serve as an example to other nations. I'm skipping over these verses, but I do want to read 49:13. It says, O men, behold, we have created you all out of a male and a female, and have made you into nations and tribes, so that you might come to know one another. That's just an outright rejection of the Homo sapien natural them versus us attitude. It's a celebration of diversity in a 1,400-year-old script. The people of the book, meaning Christians and Jews, were protected. For their protection, they paid a head tax. Very enlightened practice in pre-modern times. Islam had a social safety net in the 7th century. Quranic theme number 5 is jihad. Jihad means exertion or struggle. The Quran commands that we struggle against the evil in ourselves. We struggle to be moral, to reform society. This can also mean, however, the duty to fight injustice and oppression. Jihad, therefore, has two broad meanings, nonviolent and violent. These two meanings are expressly contrasted. The Prophet, upon returning from warfare, which he was doing against the oppression of the Quraysh, the Meccans, once said, "We return from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad." The greater jihad is the more important and difficult struggle against the ego and force it into submission to the will of God.